I think having stories ready that demonstrate in real terms, in real scenarios, with real people, what your values look like is the best way to model what you're expecting, especially if the stories can be about your leadership.
Calling people up to be better leaders. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about these things with Steve Blair. Steve Blair, a home run hitter, Arkansas at large. He's the guy. They said they introduced him as being the world leader.
Oh, boy.
And then he kind of diffused that and said Arkansas and then maybe Bentonville. I don't know. But
if you've
it's
never
somewhere
left
in
72708 zip code, then maybe so, but that's about it. Jim, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think he's somewhere in there, and we're going to find out today just what he knows and what he's going to be able to give to all of us today. To be able to take notes, copious notes, take the notes, because it's going to give some power information to you today. So we want to hit this. We're going to dive deep, ask some serious questions, and maybe not so serious questions, but we're going to learn some cool stuff today on Visionary Leader. So here we go. Look, guys, how'd your own view of leadership evolve over your career, your time? Obviously we start out as one and then it evolves pretty quickly in some cases. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I would say I'd say I've had probably 4 distinct chapters of kind of how I look at leadership, and I only knew that the first 2 were available and possible at the time. I would say, I think we started out careers. I was sure hungry coming out of school and wanted to just be a really capable contributor to a team. I'd, all through high school and college been leading organizations, president of this and whatnot. And so I felt like I knew the basics, but until I got into the work world and I worked for P&G for 16 years, I really found out pretty quickly that, I'm a capable contributor for a little while. And then I became kind of an authentic manager of teams. I got an opportunity to lead a group of people, and that's where I got to kind of do that in my own way, but still within the confines of what was expected or what was normal. And it was at that point that I kind of thought I was peaked out. I was going to lead teams for the rest of my career, and that'd be great. And I had a leader on the Walmart business down here that helped me see what he saw in me, which was an opportunity to lead at another level. And he gave me that opportunity to lead an organization. And that's where it really got exciting for me, and where it went from doing great work and helping other people do great work to actually influencing the direction of an organization. And so that was a chapter I didn't think I would get to reach until a leader believed in me and gave me the opportunity. And then I would say, second half of my career, I have been way more intentional about finding exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and doing that well. And I would say this is like my third or fourth chapter of leadership, where I'm doing what I'm uniquely gifted to do, and that I think shows up authentically, and it allows me to lead in a way that I didn't think I could lead at, and most people may not expect to lead in a way like this. But I got an opportunity because I believe I'm in that sweet spot of where I'm supposed to be, not just what I'm supposed to be doing, but the kind of people I'm with and the organizations I'm leading. That's kind of how my view evolved over time. Was really, there was this first section that had a cap on it, an artificial cap on it, and then I was allowed to believe there was more. And then in that journey, I got a chance to feel what it was like to be doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and that unlocked kind of a fourth level for me, which has been a blast.
Yeah. Kind of fit in at that point, or you feel like it's the imposter syndrome, as they call it. It seems to evolve away at some point,
Yeah, it
and
tends
then
to fade. Yeah, it's always there. It's always there, but it tends to fade.
tends to fade away. For our listeners, put a timestamp on some of this stuff. So
Yeah.
those 4 levels that you went through, what like, timing-wise, because we say overnight success is 20, 30 years, but what is that kinda level like for our listeners, leaders
Yeah.
listening, give them time perspective of what that felt like when you first started out and what kind of as that evolved.
Yeah, I would say, for my own personal journey, I probably had 4 years of, capable contributor, additional responsibility here and there, get to manage a little bigger business, and then I was asked to relocate and lead a small team of people in a geography I'd never lived, on a business I'd never run or sold, and that lasted about, 3 years. And then I got the opportunity to come to Northwest Arkansas and work on the Walmart business for P&G, leading the diaper business, and that's where that third set of opportunities came, where that team leader, that VP felt like I had something in me that I didn't see myself yet, and from there, I spent probably a good 7 or 8 years at that level, kind of leading an organization, leading a larger team, and then it wasn't until 2015, so probably 17 years into my career, 18 years, and about 10 years ago, when I stepped into this current chapter, which is the, I don't know what you call it, the higher octane. Like, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm leading the teams I'm supposed to lead. I'm leading the function I'm supposed to lead. I have not been in people and culture, or many people call it HR. Um, for my whole career, I've only been officially doing that work full time for about 10 years. But for the
Mm,
previous 20 years, I always found ways to work those responsibilities into my day jobs. So they were like work hobbies. Um, and so I would say, to answer your question, I guess more directly, couple of years finding my footing, figuring out how things work, but performing enough to be offered additional opportunity, a good handful of years leading at that next level, that team level. And then after about 10 years, it was starting to really believe that I could lead at a higher level. And then another 10 years after that, finding the zone. And in fact, it's interesting you were talking about this. My mission, my purpose in life, I believe now, is God gave us the gift of work, and everyone deserves to love it. I believe that everyone deserves to love the work they've been given to do. Not everyone does. And so the the two halves of what I'm called to do is, one, help people find ways to love the job they're in, to love their work. And then the part that's really gotten me excited the last 10 years is come alongside leaders and founders to create work and culture and organizations that are worthy of being loved. And
mm.
it's really in that sweet spot that time seems to have stood still. Like, I'm not looking at the calendar anymore. I'm not counting the years between this level and that level and this role and that role. I'm just running as fast as I can down the lane that God has me in right now, and that's a
So that
blast.
overnight success sounds like it's about 15 to 20 years, and now you
Multiple
found the sweet
chapters.
spot,
Yeah,
multiple chapters, and
that's right.
you're finding that lane and accelerating in that lane.
And I want
Yeah,
people to
that
get there faster than I did. It took me 15 years to find my eventual lane. And, I don't expect people to find it in their first job out of college, or the
yeah,
first job out of high school and trade. I don't expect them to find it right away. But man, if I can cut their time in half of what I
oh,
had,
yeah,
if I can get them to find it within 5 years, man, I'm impacting a life and for generations if they can get
yeah.
in that lane faster.
Yeah, I agree. That's super powerful. I think for me, we teach frequently on management. Management is based on process and systems. Leadership is based on influence and impact. And sometimes there's two of them. You have both hats on. And
Hmm.
eventually another leader will find that person on the team and give the nod, give the handshake, give the pat on the back and say, wow, I see some leadership talents here. You're really influencing in this management role, and then
Yeah.
you start assuming these other leadership roles, and then it accelerates.
Yeah.
If you can pour gas on that for anybody on the team, that's a really, really powerful moment because it changes people's lives,
Yeah.
changes their
For sure.
lives. Yeah,
For
and
sure.
as we've had opportunities, right? We've been impacted at some level by somebody
Sure.
came in and
Now, for
said,
you,
"Wow."
it only took 1 year for you to join a company and then to become CEO of the company at age 19, I think is the
Yeah,
story I've heard. So your
yeah,
timetable was a little different than mine.
yeah,
Uh,
and now that I'm 30, I've been at it for about 10, 11 years.
I love it.
I'll be 60 in May, and, it's literally we're gonna August will be 41 at this.
Incredible.
And, yeah, and I had a great leader, which is still a great friend. He's 88 years old, John is his name, and,
Incredible.
I say he was really quite the mentor, and, not the smoothest, but he would interrupt patterns of thought, and he would
Mm.
accelerate when he saw an opportunity to accelerate, and so, I have, definitely have some of his characteristics, and, of course, all of those leaders prior to that, including school teachers and beyond. It's
Oh,
literally
yeah.
everybody had an impact in my leadership. I was engaged in a conversation the other day with a guy from Anheuser-Busch, and he's a top executive there. And we got into this next question here about culture. And it's literally what does it look like for leaders to truly take responsibility for the corporate culture, if you will? And this was a struggle that he was expressing, and hiring, of course, is really a critical component to that, is getting a good fit and then accelerating those that are a good fit. But how do you do that? What does it look like for leaders really to take responsibility for the culture and keep it accelerating on a corporation? What does that look like?
Yeah. I tell you, I think from a leader standpoint, first of all, hopefully there's already connection between the leader and the organization's purposes. Like, right? I hope the leader that we're talking about is already aligned with the mission of the organization, the values that have been established within the organization. And if we can start with that assumption, and I hope we can, then I think the leader's role in helping that culture evolve, come to life, stay resilient, it's a number of things. One is um, authentically connect with what we just talked about, like authentically connect with the values. And I think one of the single best tools, levers, whatever you want to call it, in an organization and for a leader leading an organization is to use the lens of the values of the organization. And when I say use the lens, I mean every decision can be filtered and traced back to we chose A, not B, because of our value of resilience or our value of integrity or our value of excellence. And so the biggest thing I would say is look at every decision through the lens of your values because it's a whole nother world if you can justify every decision you make by using the lens of the values. So the first thing I would say is assuming again the leader is authentically aligned with the organization's mission, um, treat every decision like an opportunity to live out the values. Um, Second thing I would say is there is significant power in uh, vulnerable transparency. You and I talked about a little bit before we got on air about being real and being an open book. I think one of the things that a leader can do to solidify a culture is while they're living it out authentically, while they're making decisions through the lens of their values, is to authentically be transparent and to be vulnerable. Vulnerable is a hot word. It has been for I don't know 5 or 10 years, but it's just
Mhm.
this idea that bring your whole self to work. Let your team experience you as God has built you and made you and equipped you. Um, and if you can do those two things, live and work through the lens of the values and vulnerably show up whole with the organization, I think those two things are speed dials for the culture of an organization. Similarly, if either one of them is off track, they are a huge brake pedal for a culture. If a leader isn't authentically aligned, or they're making decisions that don't align with the values, or if they're closed off and not bringing their whole self to work, and there's a Monday through Friday Steve, and there's a Saturday and Sunday Steve, and um, I think those are just two of the huge levers that a leader
Yeah.
can turn and dial in for an organization's culture.
We have authenticity, and I'll put that up in air quotes, but it's
Yeah.
literally one of our core values. And it's one thing that if you do like a wordsmithing of your own values, for me, years ago, it came back repetitively, and I was looking for a different journey, but authenticity is what really came back.
Yeah.
And I've had the opportunity to coach some folks, and I was coaching a gal that is her first year female running a group that's all dominated by males, and she was the first female leader in this company after 30 some odd years with the
Wow.
company. And she says, "I'm so frustrated with this. I just want to cry." And and I just said, "They need to see the authentic you." And that's really important, cry or otherwise, but they need to see the
Yeah.
authentic you. You can't sugar this up. And about 2 weeks later, at another meeting, she came back. She says, "Oh my goodness, I was bawling." And all of the warehouse people came up, hugged me, and they
Yes.
said, "I had no idea what you had been asking of us for the last couple of years. Today it makes sense. I'm so sorry that I didn't fulfill the needs of the
Mm.
request. I will be different today." And
Isn't that
now
incredible?
she's getting ready to retire. But authenticity is so critical, and being crystal clear in your values for a company, for some of our newer companies that are listening in, get them values, even if it's 2 or 3, get them written down so they're truly authentic to you and the
Yeah.
company, and then grow people with that as your guardrails, because that's gonna help you accelerate in your lane for sure.
Yeah. Love it.
The, leader setting expectations, how do you bring out the best in people by setting expectation? How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two pieces to that. There's how do you connect with people, and how do you set expectations? Um, and I've got a different answer for both of those. I'll um, I'll go with the second one first, with the expectation, because I think that's the root of the question you were asking.
Yeah.
Um, I learned the hard way, um, of a way that I now approach people's development plans or development opportunities, which to me is where expectations start. It's the clarity of expectations around the role, around performance. Um, I was a new leader in an organization. I had a direct report that she reported to me, but she supported 3 senior leaders on the team in an administrative capacity, and so they didn't want one of the 3 of them to be her manager. So the people and culture leader became kind of the manager for her, and she had a really rough first year. Now, to know her personally, to know she had a really rough year personally, which is what and it came to work with her because she was authentic. But I waited until her annual review to give her some pretty tough feedback, because I thought I was helping her by not coming down hard or not sharing tough feedback throughout the year. But I knew that I couldn't let the year pass without sharing this feedback. It was really important that she
Mhm.
she get the feedback. And I learned a really hard lesson that well, first of all, now I have a rule. Every organization I've been in since, no surprises in performance reviews. Zero. Like, no one should ever hear something for the first time in a performance review unless it happened the hour before the performance review. That's the only
Yeah.
exception. But she taught me this idea that if I could achieve buy-in based development plans, buy-in based feedback, what that basically means is, hey, if I can understand where you want to go as a career path or as a personal development plan, if I know where you want to head, and you give me permission to to help you get there, they've bought in now to where we're going together. And so when I need to give tough feedback, the permission has been granted to give tough feedback in the moment, timely, candid feedback,
Mm.
because it's in service of where they told me they want to go. And so she helped me understand that tough lesson. And so I've taken that into every development conversation since then is, hey, if you help me understand where you want to go and you give me permission to lead you in a way that I think will help you get there faster, then we're going to have a great relationship. And that brings in the opportunity to have regular expectation setting conversations, regular discussions about how we doing versus expectations. I just think it starts with getting buy-in. Well, first of all, it starts with understanding who your people are and where they want to go. And then the second thing
Yeah.
is get their buy-in that, hey, we're in this together. And if we are in this together, you give me your permission to give you the feedback you need in the moment to keep you on that accelerated path.
So get that permission to lead. Ask them, can I
Now,
help guide this
I've had
journey?
somebody push back one time. I used to call this permission-based development. And I
Yeah.
had somebody push back and say, hey, I'm their manager. They don't need to give me permission to give them tough feedback about how they performed in that last meeting. I'm
Yeah.
like, fair enough. Fair
Fair
enough.
enough.
So we're going to do
But
buy-in based
that's right.
development where if we both buy into where we're going, then I have permission.
There you
Um,
go.
yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's getting the manager, we say that,
Yeah.
manager loosely, but getting them to evolve into leadership, it's not for everybody. And
No.
I'm sure you've discovered that on your journey, but they're great at enforcing systems and process, but as far as inspiration and impact, may not be in their lane.
Yeah.
And so
You're totally right.
making sure we're different and clear in that. We always say in business, there's three. There's the entrepreneur, the analytical, and the artistic one. That's really the three owners of business. And the entrepreneur needs both of the other two. The creative one needs the analytic, and the artistic one, and the analytic one needs the artistic one. Otherwise, businesses fail. And
Yeah.
it really is based on management systems, process, impact, and influence. That's really a critical
Yeah.
formula to the success of a business, I think.
And that's not, you don't need to read a HBR article or a textbook from management school to know that those are the fundamentals, right?
Yeah,
Those are not
you're gonna learn them.
groundbreaking ideas on their own. It's just understanding them in concert with each other is where the magic happens.
I don't even think they teach it in school. In the master's program, I don't remember hearing any of this. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you're like, okay, yeah, here's what's really going on. And I'm thinking one thing, and they're thinking something completely different. How does leaders challenge people? Like, how do we do that and still deeply, involving and care for them so they understand it? But we'll raise the bar. We'll create that discomfort for them. And that happens frequently because we know there's no change. If there's no emotion, it's short-term change.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And they still care. They know that we care deeply about them, but we're going to make things a little uncomfortable from time to
Yeah.
time.
One of my mentors has a visual or a model that he likes to talk about when you're talking about pushing people or developing people. And he says, sometimes you need to whisper in their ear, sometimes you need to pat them on the back, and sometimes you need to kick them in the butt. And sometimes all three. But those are really different approaches, right? Like developing someone is whispering in their ear, hey, you might think about approaching it this way, or you might think about it, doing it this way. Patting them on the back is about recognition, about support and encouragement. But that third one is necessary sometimes, which is just get their attention, right? Like you've talked about this twice. I need you to step up in this way. I love that he talks about those. Those are the three ways that a leader can impact a person, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's all three within the same hour. But it's this idea, and I know I listened to a couple of your episodes with conversations with Josh Folliart, but um, it's this model of meeting people where they are, understanding who they are, meeting them where they are, and then showing up with the right kind of communication and the right kind of coaching. Um, it goes all the way back to
at the
situational
right
leadership.
time.
Yeah, at the right time. You're totally right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the
not at the
right
end of the
time
year in a
because
performance review. Yeah.
yeah, that kick in the butt may be great on Tuesday this week, but it may not work real good on Thursday this week.
Yep.
So being able to read the team member for sure, and then giving them what they need when they need it.
Yeah.
That's really important. Yeah. Leaders modeling behaviors. This is on the list here that we got to talk about this. How do leaders model the behaviors that they want repeated? We say you got to lead by example. If you want them to go to the fire, you got to kick the door open first, truly lead. And what does that look like? How do you model the behaviors that you want them to repeat?
Yeah, I think that it starts way back at the beginning on the recruiting side of making sure that the people you bring in the organization do align with the values that we talked about, and certainly the leaders align with the values. But I think, man, Jim, I think the single most impactful tool for a leader to do that is through telling stories, is through experiencing the values of the organization, experiencing the kind of management style you want or the kind of leadership you're looking for, is to have a story handy for every situation, especially as it relates to your values. I think for any organization, you need to have two stories at the ready to to visualize and come to life the values of the organization. I think of integrity is a fairly popular value, and we could debate whether integrity should be a stated value. Why shouldn't that be in every organization's
Yeah,
way to do business? But integrity is a very popular value. Well, a company I used to work with, um, they had a very impactful story about the value of integrity. And the crazy thing is, I was in this organization for 7 years, and we probably told the story two or three times over that 7 years because it was that ingrained in the culture. Here's how I knew it was ingrained in the culture is I was at lunch a few months ago and bumped into someone that I met in another circumstance, but they had gone to work for this company in the last 6 months. And they told me the story about integrity that we were telling 10 years earlier for the first two generations of people that worked at the company. And so I knew at that point, but that story has stuck. That is
yeah,
a believable, real example of what integrity looks like. So that person, that new hire essentially knows exactly what the value of integrity looks like in that organization. And it's based on a story that had lasted 15 years.
yeah,
So storytelling, to answer your question, I think having stories ready that demonstrate in real terms, in real scenarios, with real people, what your values look like is the best way um, to model what you're expecting, especially
yeah,
if the stories can be about your leadership and
yeah,
how you responded in a scenario where integrity was brought to the forefront, or creativity or trust. Those all
yeah,
every value you have stories at the ready.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. It's if you listen to the greats, I'll say the greats. Let's say John Maxwell is his ability to tell a story.
Oh yeah,
And I got to shake his hand again recently, and I've followed him for 30 plus years because he had a church in San Diego,
sure.
and I later in life was chair of a homeless facility and getting people clean and sober, discipling people to, lead others basically, and we used his church as our landing ground for, raising money, doing some galas and some
Wow.
other things. And so I got to meet him, and, of course, I thanked him for, being influential in my life and how I teach and how I coach and how I do business. And he's like, he thanked me, and he told me a quick story about friendship, and he says, "It's good to have the old friends around because the old friends tell the story." And it's literally that in the
Yeah.
culture and the value is you have to have emotion with the story. You can't just read from a textbook. You can't just read the story. You have to live it and be authentic in the story. And when there's emotion in it, it's transformational and it's never forgotten.
Yeah,
And we use the
totally.
first teacher that impacted your life. You never, ever forget that first teacher that, first, second grade. You don't ever forget them. They had a
Mhm.
massive impact and it was story based and forever it's with you. And so John Maxwell, one of my favorites, of course.
Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to see him multiple times over my lifetime here and trained by him and got certified by him. And I'll
yeah,
go see him in a minute if I could, if I could go see him every week, I'd probably do it because his message, storytelling, is very
yeah.
powerful.
He shows up as John Maxwell every time he gets a chance to speak, and that John Maxwell is a special guy, so you know you're
Yeah.
in for a treat when you see him on the list.
Yeah. He golfs with Dave Ramsey all the time. I always have the illusion, I guess, of one day I'll golf with these guys, but I can't imagine the stories
Yes.
when they're on the golf course because they're great, both great storytellers. And I'm like, man, how would you even get in a conversation with these guys? You're gonna hear another story.
Yeah,
It's inevitable. It's pretty
for
powerful, I
sure.
think.
Storytelling, man, it's so important.
So important. Message that we want most leaders to hear about their impact on people. This, I think, is really important because I think this is one of the ways you start to figure out that you're truly a leader is because you are impacting, and then people will either act out or repeat what they've heard or seen as a leader. So, what message do you want most, or you want these leaders to that are impacting other people? What do you want them
Yeah.
to know about that?
I'm leading a new initiative at our company called the People Leader Lab, and it was my way of putting the right amount of emphasis on the importance of leading direct reports. And we've got an organization of 60 people, but 23 of them have at least one direct report. And so I wanted to put some real discipline behind teaching what it's like to lead people. And so one of the things I used to kick off our session probably 3 weeks ago was some Gallup data that said basically in any time in any organization, 20% of people are actively disengaged.
Yeah.
20% of people are actively engaged in the work and in the work of the company. And then the 60% in the middle are just showing up and doing the work. They're neither disengaged or engaged. But here's the data that caught my attention. 70% of the reason that a person goes from one box to the other, whether they go from doing the work to disengaged or doing the work and engaged, 70% of that movement is attributed to their manager's engagement.
Hmm.
So it just shows that you could be 3 years in the workforce managing one direct report, but your impact on that direct report will make a difference between whether they show up engaged, disengaged, or just fill in the seat. And it was that data point that said, "Oh, wait a minute, I can have influence, and it can go both directions." So I want to only send people to the right in that model. So how can I make sure I send people to the right? Because my engagement or lack of can send people left as well.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's how I kicked off the whole training was, you may not realize this. Well, first of all, realize that not everyone is engaged all the time. That's a fact. But second, the vast majority of the impact on whether a person is engaged or not and moves between them is your engagement in them and in their work
Yeah.
and in their life and in their expectations and in their performance. Um, yeah, I think if you ask me if I could, teach one or what's one golden rule for a manager or a leader, it's know that your level of engagement can move the needle either direction.
Yeah. And it will.
It will.
It won't stay stagnant. It will move the needle one way or the other.
Yeah.
So you gotta make sure you understand eyes and ears are on you as a leader at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah, at all
Totally.
time. And it's impacting them.